Recently, President Donald Trump delivered a sharp warning to the BRICS countries, a group made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. He stressed that any move to challenge the supremacy of the US dollar would not be tolerated. He declared that nations attempting to undermine the dollar could expect severe economic sanctions, including 100% tariffs. Trump made it clear, the US dollar is non-negotiable, and the United States will not back down from defending its dominance in global trade. But here's the twist. Despite these stern warnings, BRICS is not backing off. In recent years, these nations have been making significant strides towards reducing their dependence on the US dollar. A critical move in this direction has been encouraging trade in local currencies. Take Brazil and China, for example. They've agreed to trade directly in their own currencies, the Chinese yuan and the Brazilian real, cutting out the US dollar as the middleman. This move helps not only in reducing exchange rate risks, but also fosters greater financial independence for these nations. It's a strategic push to rewrite the rules of international trade without the influence of the US dollar. Alongside this, BRICS is taking another vital step, the massive accumulation of gold reserves. By the end of 2024, the BRICS countries are on track to own approximately 6,200 tons of gold, representing over 21% of the world's reserves. This is not just about hoarding gold. It's a powerful strategy to shield these countries from financial volatility and economic sanctions, ensuring they have assets beyond the reach of the US dollar. In a bold move, BRICS has launched a new payment system, BRICS Pay. This cross-border payment platform, powered by blockchain technology, enables BRICS nations to conduct transactions in their own currencies, bypassing traditional Western-dominated financial systems like SWIFT. With BRICS Pay, members can now make direct payments in their local currencies, eliminating currency conversion fees and reducing transaction costs. This platform is not just about saving money. It's a direct challenge to the US-dominated financial architecture, pushing for a more independent, multipolar global financial system. The unveiling of BRICS Pay and the gold accumulation strategy are part of a long-term plan to reduce reliance on the US dollar and establish a new financial order. These moves reflect a growing tension between the US and BRICS, with the latter aiming to alter the dynamics of global finance. As these nations rally together, they're not just shifting their financial policies, they're reshaping the very landscape of global power. But can BRICS truly break the US dollar's dominance? That's the million-dollar question. The US dollar isn't just a currency. It's the backbone of global trade and finance, deeply embedded in financial networks, trade agreements, and political stability worldwide. Its dominance is reinforced by international treaties, financial markets, and global institutions where the US holds significant sway. That said, BRICS' strategies are putting pressure on the US, and the future could see significant shifts in the global financial landscape. With increasing cooperation among its members, BRICS is carving a path toward a multipolar financial system where power and influence may no longer be solely in the hands of the US. So, what does the future hold for the US dollar? Will BRICS truly succeed in breaking its stranglehold, or will the US continue to dominate? As these strategies unfold, one thing is clear. We are at a pivotal point in global finance, and the US dollar supremacy could very well be on the line of the US.
Okay, but before we even get started, hey, the elephant in the room. President Trump's in the hospital from COVID. And I just want to say my heart goes out to COVID.
Chris Rock kicks off with a savage throwback, one of Trump's most ridiculous moments, suggesting we should inject disinfectant to fight COVID. He mimics Trump's tone perfectly as the crowd bursts out laughing. Rock also mocks Trump's obsession with crowd size, pointing out how bizarre it is that a president would care that much. It's hilarious, but also a little too real. The internet agrees. This bit spreads like wildfire across social media. Next, Rock compares Trump to a walking, talking SNL sketch, not in parody, but in real life. He goes in hard, listing off a string of Trump's most embarrassing business failures: Trump steaks, Trump University, Trump Airlines. Each name hits like a punchline because behind every flashy logo was a collapse waiting to happen. Trump Steaks, sold through Sharper Image. Trump University, fined $25 million for fraud. Trump Airlines, gone within 3 years. The audience doesn't just laugh, they recognize the truth in the joke. It's not just comedy, it's a brutal takedown of Trump's entire so-called branding empire, a legacy built on gold letters and bankrupt promises.
Be a war hero that got captured. I don't want to vote for nobody that got captured. I want to vote for that got away.
But the real shocker. Chris Rock calls out Melania Trump. He doesn't need to exaggerate, just pointing out how cold she looks when standing next to Donald. Her blank stares, the hand dodges, that stiff, forced smile. And suddenly the internet is obsessed again. Melania becomes the unexpected co-star of this viral moment. And that brings us to the moment everyone's been waiting for. Clips of Melania avoiding Trump's touch, they go viral again. People start wondering, is she done with this marriage? Google searches for Melania Trump jump over 450% in just 24 hours. Chris Rock didn't just tell a joke, he reopened a national obsession.
Man, they got Elon, they gonna put him on a rocket ship. We call it Space Mex. Oh yeah. J-Lo's gonna marry Ben again just so she can stay in the country.
And how did Trump respond? Just as expected, furious. He storms through Mar-a-Lago, then rushes to post on Truth Social, calling Chris Rock disrespectful and not funny. Some sources even say he's threatening legal action, but it backfires. The clip spreads faster, the memes double, and the conversation only grows louder.
Will. And then you get to the resort and you're like, Jamaica's nice.
Chris Rock's genius? It wasn't just funny, it was accurate. Every joke hit a nerve, not because it was cruel, but because we'd seen it all before. Trump's weird moments, Melania's quiet resistance, the brand failures, the outbursts. Rock took all of that and turned it into a comedy set America couldn't ignore. And judging by how loud the internet got, this performance hit exactly where it was meant to. Don't go anywhere. We've got more fascinating stories coming your way.
Welcome back. President Trump is threatening to put a 200% tariff on wine, cognac, and other European alcohol imports, including
200% tariffs. Could those beloved bottles of wine and champagne from the EU become pawns in the biggest trade war happening right now between the US and the EU?
Here is what he just posted. Quote, the European Union has just put a nasty 50% tariff on whiskey. If this tariff is not removed immediately, the U.S. will shortly place a 200% tariff on all wines, champagnes, and alcoholic products.
President Donald Trump has issued a bold threat. If the EU does not change its tariff policies on U.S. steel and aluminum, the U.S. will impose tariffs as high as 200% on wine, champagne, and other alcoholic beverages from EU countries. This is not a hasty decision, but a strategy aimed at pressuring the EU to change the unfair tax policies the US claims they have in place. In reality, this is a hard blow to the EU's wine industry. In 2023, the EU exported about $13.1 billion USD worth of alcoholic beverages to the US, with French wine being the flagship product in that trade. A 200% tariff could cause the price of French and Italian wines to soar, leading to a decline in market share for EU wines in the US. This could severely impact major wine producers in Europe, as American consumers will face double the price for their favorite wines. The wine industry is unlikely to sit idly by. This tariff increase will certainly hit the wine industries in countries like France, Italy, and Spain hard. But this is not just a loss for Europe. If tariffs on EU wine rise, US consumers may turn to other options, including domestic wines. shrinking the market share of EU wine producers in the US.
One day to the other, we will have to stop to send our wines to the United States. There is no way we can sell wines in the United States. We can reach this market if we are suffering a 200% tariff.
After Trump's threat to impose 200% tariffs, the European Union responded firmly. Senior officials from the EU declared that Europe would not give up its wine industry and would protect these products against any threats from the US. The EU asserted that it would not concede in this confrontation and was ready to defend its national interests. The European Union strongly criticized President Trump's trade policies, arguing that the 200% tariff on wine and champagne would not only hurt the industry but also damage the trade relationship between the US and the EU. French wine producers, especially premium brands like Champagne, will face great difficulties as high tariffs push up the cost of their products. France has spoken out to protect the interests of its wine industry and is ready to face any retaliatory measures from the US. However, this confrontation creates opportunities for US wine producers. If the EU does indeed impose 200% tariffs on imported wine, US winemakers could expand into the EU market, especially if the US reduces tariffs on domestic wine. This could be a huge boost for the US wine industry, allowing them to build and expand their market in countries that are already familiar with European wine brands. If the EU continues to maintain its tariff rates and refuses to yield, the wine industry in these countries will certainly face a significant decline in revenue in the US. At the same time, US wine producers will have the opportunity to expand their market share in EU countries if they reduce tariffs on domestic wine products, especially California or Texas wine brands. The trade war between the US and the EU is entering a phase of unprecedented tension. How will the EU respond? And can the US seize this opportunity to expand its wine market in Europe? Don't look away, because the next developments in this tariff war will surprise you. Just 80 kilometers long, but the Panama Canal sees more than 14,000 ships pass through each year. That's over 5% of all global maritime trade, and more than 70% of that traffic is connected to US ports. Then, in early 2025, Donald Trump announced his plan to take back control of the canal. So why does the US want back in? What is China losing in this game? And how will Panama navigate between two superpowers? At a campaign rally, Donald Trump declared he would regain control of the Panama Canal. He criticized the high fees imposed on U.S. ships, calling them unfair, and claimed the U.S. was being drained by the very route it built. Trump pointed directly at CK Hutchison Holdings, a Hong Kong-based conglomerate, which currently operates two strategic ports at both ends of the canal, Balboa on the Pacific and Cristobal on the Atlantic. According to Trump, this compromises America's trade security and national defense. Beyond speeches, an internal document described as a Provisional National Security Guide revealed that the Trump administration had asked the Pentagon to consider all options to secure long-term U.S. access to the canal. These options included military cooperation, technical assistance, and measures to guarantee the canal's neutrality. Panama responded quickly. The foreign ministry stated firmly, "The Panama Canal is a national asset. It belongs to the Panamanian people, and it will remain that way." Yet just weeks later, Panama made a series of strategic adjustments. First, Panama announced its withdrawal from China's Belt and Road Initiative, a program it had joined back in 2017. Second, the Attorney General of Panama canceled the long-standing port concession agreement with CK Hutchison Holdings. Originally signed in 1997 and renewed in 2021. The deal had extended their rights for another 25 years. Together, these moves reflect a significant shift in Panama's foreign and economic policy. A small nation with no military, using the US dollar, Panama is deeply dependent on international trade. Shortly after the CK Hutchison deal was canceled, a new consortium led by U.S. investment giant BlackRock announced it had secured a deal to take over port operations, valued at $22.8 billion. BlackRock is the largest asset manager on Earth, a symbol of America's financial power. The Panamanian government stressed that this was a purely commercial transaction with no effect on national sovereignty or control over the canal. But the timing raises questions. A U.S. company replacing a Hong Kong operator at a critical global choke point, just as the U.S. signals its return. Many suspect a tight coordination between U.S. policy and private capital flows. So far, Beijing has not issued any official comment, but make no mistake, China is still the second largest user of the Panama Canal. It also holds vast investments across Latin America in infrastructure, mining, and trade. Analysts believe China is now following a no-conflict strategy, strengthening ties with regional giants like Brazil, Nicaragua, and Argentina, while diversifying trade routes through the Arctic and across Africa. It's all part of China's long-term plan to reduce reliance on U.S.-controlled choke points. This battle is not military, but it has all the hallmarks of a modern power struggle. The U.S. is using trade leverage, tax policy, and financial investments to restore its influence. China is staying low profile, but expanding horizontally. Panama is walking a tightrope, trying to balance between two titans, while still asserting its sovereignty. As the global trade map continues to shift post-pandemic and new conflicts reshape supply lines, the Panama Canal is once again a flashpoint, a place where two global powers are testing each other without firing a single shot. So, what do you think of Trump's announcement? Will China strike back quietly? And what path will Panama choose next? Stay tuned. The next chapters in this story may change the course of global trade forever. BRICS is considering withdrawing from the IMF and World Bank. This could signal a massive shift in the global financial system. Countries like Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are looking to create an alternative financial structure that's less reliant on the USD and not controlled by the West. But what's driving this change? And what could the US lose if this shift becomes a reality? The IMF and World Bank have been under fire for prioritizing the interests of the US and Europe, while emerging economies often get sidelined. The US and Europe control over 50% of the IMF's voting power, while BRICS nations, which represent a huge chunk of global population and GDP, have very limited influence. IMF's loan conditions often include cutting public spending, privatizing national assets, and opening markets in ways that benefit the West, leaving developing nations at a disadvantage. The result? Countries like Nigeria, Indonesia, and Brazil have seen rising costs, economic instability, and even social unrest as citizens protest IMF's harsh measures. Russian Finance Minister Anton Siluanov puts it bluntly: IMF no longer serves the interests of BRICS. We need a fairer system. BRICS isn't just talking about making changes, they're taking action. First up, there's the New Development Bank, NDB. It operates like the IMF but without the strict loan conditions. It allows BRICS countries to collaborate financially without being subject to Western pressures. Then, there's the BRICS Contingent Reserve Arrangement, CRA, designed to help member countries manage financial crises without the need for IMF assistance. They're also developing the BRICS payment system, BRICS Pay. This will allow BRICS nations to transact using their own currencies, reducing dependence on the USD. At the 2024 BRICS Summit, leaders discussed expanding the use of China's yuan and their own local currencies in international trade, cutting down on the USD's dominance. Russia even proposed creating a BRICS grain exchange, allowing BRICS nations to trade goods without using Western financial systems. BRICS isn't just distancing itself from the IMF, the US is making it worse. According to the Wall Street Journal, some US politicians are pushing for Project 2025, a proposal that suggests the US should pull out of the IMF and the World Bank, redirecting over $770 billion into domestic programs. Supporters argue American tax dollars should stay home, not fund global institutions where Washington doesn't have total control. But here's the real danger. If the US exits the IMF, BRICS will fill the void, reshaping global finance, weakening Western influence, and challenging the dollar's dominance. What happens if the US leaves the IMF? The IMF takes a hit. The US is the IMF's largest shareholder. If it exits, IMF credibility collapses, triggering a confidence crisis among member nations. BRICS gains momentum. With the new Development Bank, NDB, and BRICS Reserve Fund, CRA, BRICS can offer alternative loans, undermining Western financial control. China tightens its grip. As BRICS' largest economy, China could leverage this shift to push the yuan into global trade, accelerating de-dollarization and weakening U.S. financial power. U.S. sanctions lose their bite. The IMF has been a critical tool for enforcing economic pressure. If it weakens, sanctions on Russia, Iran, and Venezuela become less effective, reducing Washington's influence. Shift in global loan policies. Unlike the IMF's austerity-driven approach, BRICS banks offer infrastructure funding without forcing budget cuts or privatization. That's a game changer for developing nations. Is Washington handing power to BRICS? This isn't just a domestic policy shift, it's a seismic global transformation. If the US pulls out of the IMF, Western financial dominance could crumble faster than anyone expects. If BRICS pulls the trigger on leaving the IMF and World Bank, it would trigger a fundamental change in the global financial system. This wouldn't just shift financial power away from the US and the West, it would give emerging economies a much louder voice in shaping global financial decisions. With less dependence on the USD, there's a real chance for currencies like the Chinese yuan, the Indian rupee, and BRICS member currencies to take on bigger roles in international trade. This could shift the global financial balance, and the US will face a new reality where its influence isn't as dominant as it used to be.